to start off, we're going to go into the top 45 games of all time. This is going to be a three-part series. Today, we're going to do 15 board games, cover 15 of them at a time. So today is going to be 45 to 31, and then 30 to 16, 15 to 1. So the process for this, if you've used Pub Meeple, I put a list of just over 100 games on that site, and what it does is it takes the games that you put on there and it puts in like a head-to-head battle. You just choose the game you like, and then once you're done, it spits out this whole list. And so I took this list, made a couple of tweaks, and that is kind of how I put together the top 45. The criteria of the list is obviously games, simply games that I like for various reasons that I will explain over the course of time. A couple honorable mentions. The first one that I'm going to give is Azul. The reason Azul is not on this list, it would normally be in my top 45. However, when I had made this list, it was before I even was introduced to Azul. I got it as a Christmas gift. It's a fantastic game. I put it in the top 20 somewhere, so you can keep that in mind. But I just felt like I should give a shout out over there. And then before we get to the top 45 here, a couple honorable mentions for those who like an even round number to start at sort of 50. My number 50 to 46, just listing them off: Onirim, Cribbage, Pandemic, Star Realms, Nuns on the Run, from 50 to 46 respectively. Starting with my number 45, this one was actually featured as a bit of a context. I had done my top 25 games of all time last year, and so I figured I'd do this again this year, extended a little bit now that I've been privy to some more board games, and go 45 here. And this one was on the top 25 games of all time last year at number 24, so it dropped 21 spots here. This is Saboteur. Now, this is in Saboteur, you're dwarves, you're finding gold in a mine. However, there are some of you who are traders. So it is a social deduction game. And again, like most social deduction games, you don't know who is a trader or not. And so you're laying down these paths to try to get to the gold while the traders are trying to stop and hoard it to themselves. And so you're laying down the paths trying to figure out where the gold is. And there's some other special abilities, peeking to see where the gold could be, collapsing paths and everything. The reason why it's still on this list is because I just have had a lot of fun playthroughs with this, and I like the interactions that it provides with others. However, it has dropped because I feel like when it comes to social deduction games, there are other games that I tend to lean towards, and this one just hasn't, it's not one that I would pick up off the shelf. Yeah, and the other thing, I do feel like this game in particular favors the side of those who are on the good side. Even though the payoff for the traders are much greater if they win, I just feel like there is a little bit of imbalance there, and so that's kind of why it had dropped. But nonetheless, I still really enjoy it. That is Saboteur, my number 45. My number 44 is Tiny Epic Western. This was 42 last year, and so it's dropped a little bit, but not by a whole lot. And so here you are a leader of the posse in the Wild Wild West, trying to have the control of the town there. And so you're sending these posse members through worker placement to collect resources that's going to help you in other aspects of the game. But I think what makes this one really unique is there are just a bunch of different mechanics and things that are going on. You have a dueling mechanic with these neat dice that are in the shape of a bullet here. There's a three-hand poker that's played to help gain more resources or to get an edge in certain ways. You're purchasing buildings not only to gain points but have power over other influences in the town. You're going to be tracking these influence tokens throughout the game, and they're going to be moving up. There's lots of different unique mechanics, and when you talk about it, it's this weird thing that you feel it shouldn't work, but it does, and especially for a Wild Wild West theme, it fits really well with this list. And of course, the components are fantastic. I mentioned the dice that are in the shape of a bullet. There's the poker chip that comes with it, even if it's just the first player marker. That's still fantastic. I love the quality of the cards. The Tiny Epic series is I like the series in general, and there are going to be more Tiny Epic games that will make the list later on as a slight spoilers. But for this one, my Tiny Epic Western is going to make it into number 44. Moving on to number 43. This is a very popular party game. I don't know if it, I'd say it took the world by storm for the most part. This is Codenames. I really enjoy Codenames. This just barely missed my 25 list last year, ranking at 27, and it's dropped now to 43. So a decent drop here. This is a team versus team game where there's a field of agents on the table with a word associated with each of them, and one person is going to be the spy master who sees which agent is on which team, and they'll give a one-word clue to their teammates as to how many cards the clue pertains to. It's a really neat game. It's much simpler than how I'm describing it. I'm doing a terrible job at at this, but it's a really neat game with cool interactions, I feel. I love trying to puzzle it together as the spy master as to figuring out what is the best clue I can give to my teammates so that they can guess them before the other team does. But you have to be tricky, or you have to think well, because the game can be a little bit tricky in that you have the sniper card, and so if you give a clue that works for a group of people, but then it also works for the sniper, may not want to. You may have to think of a workaround with that. I think there's really cool interactions, and then as team members who are trying to guess it, when you do point to these cards, there can be some really laugh out loud moments with asking the spy master why he would give a clue to this, what's going on in their heads. I think, especially for party games, those are the type of interactions you want to have. I think it's a really neat thing. The reason why it's dropped, I've had negative game experiences with this. I feel like I need to play with the right group with this. I've had too many experiences where I would be with a group of people, and part of it's online, and so that doesn't necessarily help either with the pandemic and everything. But I've had times where I've been with a group of people, and you'd have a clue giver who sits there for like 5-10 minutes, and they're pondering. It's like, oh, that could work, but maybe not. And then after 10 minutes of thinking, they come up with like red one, and that's okay. Sometimes you can get stumped, but then the process just keeps repeating and repeating, and it's you need to be with people, I feel, who are willing to take risks. And so yeah, that's kind of why it's dropped, but I still enjoy it. That is number 43, code names. My number 42 is a very small game. And it's actually the exact opposite from Tiny Epic Western, where that one was 42, moved down to 44. This one was 44, moved up to 42. So, I mean, all in the same realm. But this is a small game called Quirkle. Here, this is kind of like a Scrabble-like experience, only with symbols and colors. And so you have these tiles with a different combination of symbols and colors. You're placing them in rows and columns with either the same color or the same symbol, and the more that you put into a row, the more points you get. And the goal is just to get as many points as you can. If you can complete a row or a column, you get a Quirkle, which gives you even more points. And so I really enjoy how incredibly simple this is to both teach and play. It still has a good amount of depth, almost like a Scrabble-like feel, without needing to have that knowledge of words that you when you play Scrabble with certain people who are really good with language, you don't feel like you can even come close. Here, at least you feel like you're doing something. The tiles themselves feel nice and chunky, and it's easy to understand. You can also buy this in a travel version, which makes it easier to bring places. So a lot of really neat things, and sometimes it's nice to have a small game like this to have around. So that is my number 42, Quirkle. My number 41, and this is a little bit of a nostalgia pick, but this is also a party game here. This one is Loaded Questions. Now, here in Loaded Questions, it's a kind of like a mix of what and ask anything, where one person is going to ask a question, everyone will answer, then the person who originally asked the question is going to try to figure out who said what, with the twist that they also get to choose which answer is their favorite. And so this is a system that's been used in many games before, but it allows for a couple different unique ways of scoring that works with different types of people. And again, this is something that's very nostalgic for me. I discovered this with one of my childhood friends, one of my best childhood friends at the time. We still connect with each other, and it's something that when we discovered it, it was like, whoa, this is such a cool game. And so for that reason, this is it does hold a place there, but it is a little bit more than that. And while I haven't played it a whole lot, each time I do play this game, it is a fantastic time. I feel like the questions that we've encountered are well written, and they're a lot of fun, and they help produce plenty of laughs every time I've played it. So for those reasons, Loaded Questions is my number 41, and it was 41 last year, so it's kind of stays right there. I like that. It's I don't think it's gonna go anywhere up or down. I think that's a good place for it right now. My number 40 is it's a chess-like game. This was 36, so barely dropped down. And if you've ever watched the few reviews I've done on my YouTube channel, this was one that was featured on the channel. And so this is, of course, Onitama. Onitama here is a chess-like game with a couple of differences. One being the board being 5x5. You have one king and 4 pawns, and then the objective is either taking out the king like chess or just by having him on the opposite side of the board. But what makes this really unique is the movement cards. The movement is not predetermined by any type of piece, but it's by these specific cards. You're gonna have 5 cards in each game. There are more cards that comes with the box itself, but each game you're only going to be using these 5 cards, and they're going to be telling you how you can move your pieces throughout the game. And the unique part of it is that whichever card you use, you're going to be giving it to your opponent for them to use on the next turn or on a future turn. So there's this really cool back and forth that comes with it, where not only are you just strategizing where you can move, but you also have to think of what you're giving to the other person. This is the definition of easy to teach, difficult to master. It's very accessible, I would say more so than chess, where I could teach this to a younger or more inexperienced players and we'd be able to understand it and get going with the game very quickly. However, it has a lot of depth as planning moves is more difficult once you have to maneuver around which cards you're giving to them and so on and so forth. And so even with 5 cards, there are many possible outcomes, which makes it a great strategy game. And it has a brilliant app that has since been taken down. Very unfortunate. It is such a fantastic app. But regardless, this is my number 40 right there. Number 39 was also featured on the top 25 list last year. This was number 16, so this has seen a huge drop. This one is Tiny Epic Galaxies. So Tiny Epic Galaxies, you're controlling a fleet of spaceships going out and exploring different planets, colonizing them, upgrading your empire, and completing secret missions, and you win by getting the most victory points. And so it has a very tight scoring system, and I've rarely had games where it's been a blowout, or if it is something like a blowout, it's only by 7 or 8 points, and so it's not yeah, games are normally really tight. The system is clean. I really enjoy the follow mechanic in this game. It allows for you. So if you're going on your turn, there's a certain mechanic that allows for other people to follow your actions. And that allows for more interaction on other people's turn. There's little to no downtime, and people are more involved in the game, which is always what you want with board games. However, like I said, this was 16. So what happened? This shifted down simply because I feel like I've seen pretty much all there is. And so like I feel there might be a variety of planets that I haven't seen. And though the game is very tight mechanically, I feel like I understand what the game has to offer, the feeling of the game. And so I feel like this is a good place for it. I feel like because it is still a very solid game, I do like coming back to it and playing this, especially with my wife. I could see this staying around this area, maybe moving a little bit up, but yeah, that's going to be where it lands for right now. My number 39, Tiny Epic Galaxies. My number 38 is a classic, at least for myself and my game group. It may not be a classic for others, but this is King of Tokyo. So King of Tokyo, you're playing as a monster who is destroying Tokyo and each other. And so there's 2 different paths to victory. One could be by going through victory points, which I kind of liken to as the fame that you're producing throughout the residents of Tokyo, or just by being the last person standing, killing off the other monsters and being the only person left alive. And so it uses the familiar Yahtzee system to storm into Tokyo, attack other monsters, and gain points. But for me, the game really opens up when you add those extra powers. And so I've seen so many gameplays where I'm teaching to newcomers, and that's another aspect of this game. I feel like this is a game that is very versatile, where I can teach it to people of pretty much any age with any background, and this is something that they can connect with. And part of it is that Yahtzee style, but it really opens up with those secret powers, or not secret powers, but these powers that you were buying and adding to your monster. And you start to see people's eyes light up as they're like, whoa, I can do that with this. And so like as they're gaining these powers and becoming more powerful by the end of the game, people are starting to really get into this game more and more. And so this is a staple in my collection. As I said, it's something that I can play with anyone. It's very familiar with the Yahtzee style mechanic, great artwork, easy to play. I think this is one of my go-to games as a welcoming game to the hobby for others. I've rarely had a game where people did not want to play again afterwards. And I think that is the reason why it is higher up on this list, is because I can bring this out and most people can kind of get behind that. And so it may not be high, it's not high up on my list as far as like super hardcore strategy games or anything like that, but I know I can bring this to a game night with newer people and have it go over well, and that's a huge plus for that. Not the flashiest game, but it doesn't need to be. So my number, what was that, 38, King of Tokyo. And I mean, it was 38 last year as well, so stays around the same, but I could see it staying kind of in that range. Now the next two, these are definitely classics. We talk about those welcoming games. I said that with the last pick with King of Tokyo, and these next two have definitely been welcoming games to me, and I use them as welcoming games for other people. And these are just, yeah, they're, if you've been in board gaming, you know what these are. This first one is Ticket to Ride. So Ticket to Ride, again, if you don't know what it is, you're basically just placing these trains on the board to complete routes, and you gain points. Most points win. I enjoy how simple this is. You have 3 actions that are available. All of them are easy to understand, and you can only choose one. And then it's the next player's turn. So it allows for very quick and easy gameplay, and yet the mechanisms work very well to create a solid, streamlined game. The other thing I enjoy is that you're always feeling like you're doing something. At least I do. Even if I get 150 points or 50 points, the fact that I feel like I have some sort of active role in like placing these trains down and picking them up, or picking up cards and everything and planning it, I feel like I'm building kind of like my own little train empire. And so yeah, that's going to be Ticket to Ride. This barely hit the top 25 last year at 25, so dropped 12 places. I guess the reason is I just haven't played this a whole bunch, and so again, I just haven't pulled it out when thinking of games to play, unless people are new to games. But you know what, that's okay. I think this is going to play a similar role as King of Tokyo, with being something that I introduce to people, or just like as an occasional once in a while thing, just to kind of say just as a good time, maybe with my wife or something like that. So number 37, Ticket to Ride. This may be a hot take, but my number 36 is Catan. And I put this above Ticket to Ride and King of Tokyo. This is again, very popular game. Again, for those who don't know it, you're playing as one of a few groups that are colonizing this island. You're building settlements, roads, and cities, collecting resources which help you further expand your empire. And the really neat thing with this, I think the bread and butter with Catan, is the interaction with others and being able to trade with other people. And so this one, it has a bit of nostalgia for me. This has been a very cornerstone piece for myself in my childhood. So I do think nostalgia plays a little bit, which is fine. It is my list. That's just the way it is. But yeah, I think all the playthroughs of this game, there have been, and part of it you do have to play with the right group. I do acknowledge that, but most of the game groups I've played with regarding this game have been fun to interact with. It definitely did save board gaming historically wise for the most part here. Strategy wise, there are flaws. A lot of the game depends on placing it down the first turn. The dice brings in a major luck factor, and sometimes you get into these king-making situations, and I'm not the biggest fan of that. But I feel like I've had so many memorable games here. I feel like the systems allow you to create these solid, memorable games, which I think is one of the best things about gaming, is being able to have these memories that you can create with other people. And so sometimes it's not always about the best mechanics, but sometimes a good game just lends itself to creating these special moments. And that's what Catan does for myself, or has done for myself. And that's why it is number 36. Moved up from 40, so 4 spots. A bit of a jump. I think it's, for the most part, it's going to stay around here. My number 35 is On Tour. So this is, if you watched again on the YouTube channel, the few reviews I've done, this was the first one I had done. Here you're a band or an artist that is planning out their tour around the US. And so this is a roll and write game. It kind of actually mixes roll and write and flip and write mechanics. So you're rolling these dice to get these numbers and flipping these cards to determine where you can put them. So you're trying to line it up, attempting to create the largest route where you're lining up these numbers from smallest to largest. And so the way the mechanics are built allows for some really neat, tough choices as to where to place your numbers, where you can strategically place them to make it or to take advantage of future rolls. And it also allows for some risky plays there as well, where you might place a number or you might have these numbers that are far apart, but like if you can just get that to work, it would blends well. And so you're trying to maximize how many points you're going to be getting on the board here. I like playing this as a solo puzzle on the app. They have a really wonderful app, and so something that I can play over the course of just 5 minutes every once in a while. It has become less about getting the high score overall and more about just simply figuring out how far I can go with the dice every once in a while. Little small game that I like to pull out every once in a while. So that is On Tour, my number 33. 35, sorry, it was 33 last year. My number 34 is another Tiny Epic game. That's 3 already for this list. It's gonna slow down a lot after this one, but this is the next Tiny Epic game, and it's moved up 3 spots from 37 last year. This is Tiny Epic Defenders. And so here, this is a cooperative game, or as I like to often play, it can be played as a solo game where you're playing as a handful of heroes working together to defend the kingdom from evil forces invading the city and surrounding areas. And so you're going out and you're reducing the threat level in each area, utilizing your special abilities, and eventually meeting up against the big boss to take them down. And so as a very quick description, you could say it's a very simplified version of Pandemic, and yet it still has a difficulty spike. And so I enjoy how simple the game is, and that it is quite quick for what it does, especially if you play solo and you know what's going on. You can just kind of go through the cards very quickly, move around and everything. And I also enjoy the variability in the combinations of characters, the foes, and the equipment. The reason why it is where it is, I don't know if I would say it's mechanically better than Tiny Epic Galaxies, but I feel like I'm still exploring this a little bit more. I haven't seen everything there is left to offer. And so it's kind of the opposite scenario of Tiny Epic Galaxies, where you have a solid game, but I feel like I've seen everything there. This one I'm still very much exploring. And yeah, I feel like once I finish it, it'll probably drop a little bit later there. But yeah, that's going to be my number 34, Tiny Epic Defenders. Moving on with the list, the final 3 for part 1. Number 33, if you've played a lot of these match 3 type of games or apps, things like Candy Crush, Bejeweled, stuff like that, this game has a similar feel. It's kind of like an adjacent to that, and this is Potion Explosion. Here in Potion Explosion, you're scientists who are collecting ingredients, again, akin to a gameplay like one of those Match 3 apps, and you're using those ingredients to create potions. And these potions are not only going to give you more points, but they will also give you extra powers to help yourself in future turns. And so the thing I like about this is you get the same feel from those Match 3 apps, only with a slightly different puzzle. Here, when you're collecting ingredients, you're just pulling out a marble, and then if 2 marbles that of the same color collide, you get all the marbles in that section, and then repeat the process. If they collide, you collect it, and if the 2 marbles are different that collide, you're done collecting there, and then those are the ingredients. What you've taken away, those are the ingredients you can use for your potion. And so you get that same feel from something like a Candy Crush and those same emotions, and allows for some really cool combo-tastic moments, and the potion abilities only helps to potentially make that feeling grow exponentially. And so that is kind of the biggest reason why. And then of course, unlike something like Candy Crush or Bejeweled or everything, you don't get these like ads or like the going you get that addictive nature without having to feel like you're I don't know, it's hard to describe, but without feeling like you're just feeling like you're never going to get to the end of the game. Here, it kind of takes it all and puts it in one package. I don't know if I explained that correct, but and then of course, if you get the physical version, which I unfortunately don't have, it comes with this really cool contraption with physical marbles and everything, and it makes it really unique in that way. And so yeah, Potion Explosion, my number 33. It was 34 last time. So yeah, it just moved up one spot. My number 32. This is a very classic game for myself. Holds a special place in my heart for good reason. This was my number 10 last year. So this is a major drop. This is Telestrations. Telestrations is another party game. Plays like telephone combined with pictures. Everyone's going to start with a word or phrase. They have to draw that with a limited time, and then you pass to the next person who will look at that drawing and then write what they think it is. And then they'll pass to the next person who only gets to look at what the previous person wrote, draw it, and it keeps on going into a continuous cycle until it goes back to the original person. So very, very simple game. And again, the way this game works allows for some really crazy gameplay moments here, and I've had so many fantastic laugh out loud moments with the game. The formula lends itself well for either some brilliant gameplay, maybe you get some people with fantastic drawings that they've made in the short 30 seconds or so, or some people who make like great guesses out of how could you possibly guess this from what the drawing was, some really cool moments, and then some hilarious left turns where it's like, what in the world were you thinking? And so you don't need to draw well to have plenty of fun with this game, which is a staple here. I remember playing this a lot with my in-laws, and some of them, they may not be the best drawers, or may not have the best guessing ability, but that's what makes it fun too. If you don't have someone who's very conscious of that and who's willing to loosen up and just have fun with it, you can get some really laugh out loud moments. And as a fun fact, this even holds a special place in my heart, and it always will, as this is a game that I actually used to propose to my wife. So that's it's a neat little thing there, but it has dropped a total of 22 places here. And that's probably because the last couple plays, I just have never had the same feel as some of the earlier moments when I've played this game here. It's still very funny, but I've lately have tended to reach toward different party games, but I'd really love to see it come back up the list. One thing that I do think would be better is having better markers. We have bought numerous markers from like the dollar store or whatnot just to replace those things, and so it's the markers themselves, it could be a bit better, but the gameplay is completely solid. So yeah, Telestrations is a classic. Number 32. My last one for today is Love Letter. And Love Letter is going to be a very small card game. This barely missed the top 25 last year, so it dropped 5 places. It was 26, now it's 31. But here's a small card game where you either try to be the last person standing or the person with the highest number card at the end of the game. And it has very simple mechanics. You just start with one card, and on your turn you draw a card, and you play a card using a special ability. Very, very simple. Probably the biggest advantage to this game and why I like it so much is its accessibility. Rounds take mere minutes to play, and you don't even need to utilize the full scoring. You could even just go for 1 or 2 rounds at a time, and that's good. It's very easy to learn, very easy to teach and play, and it comes in an extremely small package. You can carry it in a pocket or a purse. And so the gameplay is very streamlined for what it is. And even though there's some player elimination, because rounds are so short, if you're eliminated, it's much less of a shoot, now I don't have anything to do, and more of a you got me this time. And so when you're eliminated, it's not a big deal. You can always come in on the next game, or if you're wrapping it up, the games are going to end after that. And so it's dropped a bit just because I haven't gotten to play it a lot. This is one I also only have the app for it. I don't have the physical card game yet, and I played it on the app or using an online site. And there's not many opportunities to play with others. It's not something that I would like to, that I get to do online. I prefer to play other games instead, but it's really good. And so it's that simplicity that's going to make it a standout. But yeah, that's going to be my number 31, Love Letter. that is, as far as the list goes, that is it for the top 45 games part 1. I will be following up with the next 30 over the next 2 streams.